All right, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate you taking some time and getting on here and chatting a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always just refer to you as WallStreet Weightlifter because that's what you are on Instagram. So I'll always, ask people at the gym or whatever, hey, do you follow WallStreet Weightlifter? And if they don't, then I tell them to because your content's awesome. You're super strong. Your refrigerator is incredible. Um, so I just wanted to get on and chat a little bit and learn your story.
Okay, well, you know what? I'll start with the Wall Street weightlifter nickname. I actually started working at Merrill Lynch a few years back, and for anyone that's gone through some kind of like financial advisory training program, we're goofing around in the office, and the idea came to me because everyone's sitting around like they're talking about how to leverage social media and use that to generate leads. I said, well, I got to change the name. I was just going off of my regular name at the time. So like, I got to have something catchy. Like when you come across it, like it's got to be something eye-catching that you stop and look at. So
Yeah.
I was in there and I thought, everyone goes with like it's almost always like a two-name kind of deal. So it's biceps and whatever, or
Yeah.
it's always some kind of a trick in there. So I had a handful of them. Most of them were dumb. Most of them were like just goofing off. And I thought, well, what about Wall Street Weightlifter? And I thought, I'm gonna stick with that one. And so I actually had to type it out because you're only allowed a certain number of characters.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I got to check and make sure that's not too long. So I counted them, thought about it for a bit. I said, all right, whatever, I'm going to change it. And we didn't really use social media that much back then because the regulation on it's kind of tight. So you're extremely limited in what you can post in regards to finance.
Okay.
A lot of the people that post heavily, it's not individuals that are licensed.
Yeah.
So they're not up to the same level of scrutiny. So I didn't use it that much when I was at Merrill Lynch, and I kind of slowly just started using a little bit more and more. And I started really posting with COVID.
Yeah.
And so once COVID hit, I started doing more stuff online. We did what a lot of gyms did, which is transition our members to virtual. And then it just kind of grew from there. I kind of got in the habit of, instead of posting like once every 2 weeks or something, using some of the new features and posting more often, and then being forced to start explaining stuff at first to our members, and then just kind of laying out some of the principles that we use and how we train. And it just grew from there.
Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, you just have good, solid content. So whatever you're doing, just keep it up. Do you feel like that got you more leads as far as, your financial advising stuff?
It's gotten some. I left Merrill Lynch. I started my own investment advisory firm. So it's primarily friends and family.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people I have not really grown at the scale yet.
Yeah.
So it's helpful to generate leads, but I think most of the people on social media are a little bit younger.
Yeah.
And I haven't quite had the time to then kind of articulate all of those concepts about finance.
Yeah.
Because we're just busy doing other stuff. We got kids, we got a gym to run,
Yeah.
we got other clients to take care of. So by the time you sit down and really start making the content for that, it's just a time constraint.
For sure.
And I'm an amateur at this stuff. My real content strategy, I don't follow any type of like template or any kind of anything from any guru or something.
Yeah.
It's just that something pops up at the gym, something we talk about, some aspect of training that I thought about.
Yeah.
And then I just write about it.
Yeah. It's really cool. So what all do you do? Like, you guys have your gym, you said you have kids, you do some financial advising. Do you do anything else?
That's mostly it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's a lot of stuff. So you do, you do a lot. What's your gym?
Our gym is CrossFit Valley View.
Cool.
Located in Los Banos, California.
Okay. And how long have you done that?
Well, my wife started the gym 10 and a half years ago now.
That's awesome. So you're a decade affiliate.
Yeah, the gym was how we met. So I was, at the time, I was 22, and I had taken a break from school. So most of my family works in construction, and I took a break from school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I came down to California because no one, I actually grew up in Oregon.
Okay.
So nobody wanted to come to California for this job.
Yeah.
So my dad gave me a call, and he said, hey, we're going to have this spot open. Nobody wants to go. So, a spot is open for you if you want to come down here. Here's where it's going to be located. And at the time I had thought, because Oregon is about 4 million people and California is 40 million. So I in my head, I thought, I partially planned to move to California at some point anyways, just because it's a larger state. It's more populous. You're going to have more opportunity. And at the time, I only took a break from school because I didn't want to be in that trap that a lot of people are in, where you aren't really sure what you do, and you just kind of take stuff and do stuff just because it's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I fulfilled all of like the general requirements. And you're at the point where you're like, you have to pick a major and decide what you're doing. So I was like, oh, dude, I don't really want to pick. And I said, the only thing I know for sure is I don't want to be broke.
Yeah.
So I said, this whole being broke and like scraping by, I'm not about that.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, most of my family's in construction. So if you're young and able-bodied and willing to work hard, just being broke to me is like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of opportunity out there. And I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to be broke. So I'm going to take a break. I'll return. And this opportunity came to come to California. I said, well, let's go. So I packed my car, drove down, started working. And I had worked here for probably 7 months before I came to a CrossFit gym for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was how I met my wife, was that she owned the gym.
That's awesome. What kind of construction?
My introduction to this was building water treatment plants.
Okay. So that's how you started to get strong.
That's how I started. That's how I started as a kid, really.
Yeah.
So as a kid, just working around the house, I was competitive. I grew up in a blue collar family where, being able to work and being strong is valued. And so all the way from as far back as I can remember, if I was doing a project around the house with my dad and he's carrying, 2 2x4s, I'm like, well, I got to carry 3.
I still do that with my dad.
Even as a kid. So, or if his wheelbarrow's, half full, I was like, well, mine's got to be 3/4 full.
Yeah.
So that started, that really started at like a really young age, where that's just you grow up with a certain lifestyle or a certain culture, and it stays with you forever.
Yeah.
But I originally came to the gym. I came to the gym because I was training strongman at the time. And I was going to this commercial gym, and I thought, you know, I'm just wasting too much time with waiting for equipment and just getting lost in the shuffle of like, I'm waiting here, dealing with the typical commercial gym problems that you deal with. And I started off as a CrossFit hater early on. So when my first introduction, I was like, oh, that stuff's silly. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I agreed with CrossFit in theory, you know, but not necessarily the application of it at first. So, you know, I was your typical like power lifter turned strongman competitor. And, you know, my first love was strongman.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if you really think about it, if you really break it down, strongman is just CrossFit at higher intensity. You know, most of your events they're not 1 rep maxes. They are max reps for a minute. There's stuff for time. You're working a variety of different athletic qualities.
Yeah.
So where CrossFit typically is testing over, you know, 5 to 10 minutes, strongman is doing the same thing, but testing you over a minute.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a 1 rep max sport. So all the rules that apply to strongman apply to CrossFit as well. They're more similar than they are different. And once people started to get strong in CrossFit, you know, somewhere around like 2011, 12, like there was a couple years where the top guys made some huge jumps.
Yeah.
Like those jumps that they were making between like 10 to 11 to 12, I looked at it like, hey, man, I don't know what they're doing over there, but I got to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Something's going on, because at first you could be really strong, show up and crush everybody in the workout.
Yeah.
Now these guys are getting close to what high level specialists are lifting. You know, they're getting close enough to what the top power lifters, the top weightlifters, you know, the top guys are doing. You know, they're not at the same level, but they're close enough when you add all these other things in that clearly the strength training portion of what they're doing is working.
Yeah.
So I first came just because I wanted to have a dedicated spot to work out where I didn't have to deal with just people in the way, waiting all the time. And then second, I said, you know what, I do want to learn what's going on over there. I'll try some stuff out. I think it might have some benefit. And I started looking more and more at the CrossFit Journal. So I got like a slight introduction to CrossFit. I went through my wife's 2-week intro program. I did all the classes, learned all the basics, started reading a bit about the CrossFit Journal, and I realized that basically everything in CrossFit was stolen. Like, wait a second, these guys didn't come up with anything. Like, they're just taking what the top people are doing in all these sports, dialing it back just a hair off of those like end margins, and trying to squeeze like the best ideas of each modality and just cut off at the point where like you kind of go down the rabbit hole of that sport.
Yeah.
So like, let's take all the best ideas out of powerlifting, but let's just take it back a hair before you start getting into like the deep end. Same thing with weightlifting and gymnastics and the different endurance aspects. They're taking their best ideas and just bringing it back a hair. And so when I'm looking at CrossFit, I thought, you know, I have to, if you disagree with what CrossFit's doing, you're not disagreeing with CrossFit, you're disagreeing with what the top powerlifters in the world are doing. Or you're disagreeing with what the top endurance athletes are doing. You know, this isn't like weightlifting for CrossFit, it's just weightlifting.
Yeah.
Or, you know, when you jump on a rower, it's not rowing for CrossFit. This is when they conduct some of the seminars, these are the best rowers in the world. like, you're really going to argue with what they say? They might have a slightly different application because this person wants to be the best rower in the world, and this person wants to be a slightly more balanced athlete, but the principles are the same. It's like to argue against the principles of CrossFit. I've got to argue against the principles of like the best people in the world in each individual sport, because I could see it right away with powerlifting. Like, I've read enough stuff from everyone out there about powerlifting. Like, oh man, they stole all their stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is all stolen. And then you realize that when they cover every other domain, they stole that stuff too.
Yeah.
So then I realized, like, hey, the theory is phenomenal. There's a gap between the theory and the application, and that gap is closing and closing. So we're looking at what a lot of people are doing, and you're like, man, these people are incredible.
Yeah.
That gap has gotten smaller and smaller. And because I started in strongman, I remember, when they had the first World's Strongest Man competition, and they were a bit of a train wreck. Those first couple years, they were a train wreck, and they brought in people from different strength sports. They brought in track athletes, they brought in bodybuilders, weightlifters, powerlifters. Nobody was really a strongman yet. You did some other sport. And now we're combining elements of all the strength sports to create this new sport of strongman. And your first couple years were a mess.
Yeah.
And people learned how to train for strongman. They realized, like, wait a second, this is a slightly different thing. It's not exactly like one of these. So we're going to combine elements of that. And the difference in performance from those first competitions to just 10 years down the road was gigantic. And your first champion, your first real strongman champion, which was Bill Kazmaier, he was the pioneer of, like, showing people what's possible in the sport of strongman.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, wait a second, CrossFit's doing a similar thing where they're bringing in people of different, different backgrounds. And so you can look at the progression of strongman and how that evolved and see a very similar path among CrossFit. So the CrossFit Games have only been around for 15 years.
Yeah.
And you look at that progression. You look at that progression from 2007 to 2022, and you're like, wow, that is a huge difference.
Yeah, it's insane.
They're two different worlds.
Yeah.
And if you look at strongman, which started exactly 30 years prior, and look at the difference in performance from 1977 to 1992, which by that time people had figured out how to train for strongman.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, these guys crushed them. And now you look at 1992 to 2022, and there's multiple levels that they've reached in that time. To the point where it's like a guy from 92 would just get blown out.
Yeah.
If he tried to compete in 2022. And CrossFit is going to make that same leap. We're looking at people now as like, oh, how could they get better? It's like, oh, no, they're going to get better.
Yeah.
They're going to get way better because we've already seen this exact same thing. They learned, by 92, like in 15 years, they learned mostly how to train for strongman, but then it just continued to make the leap.
Yeah.
Like every few years, a new champion with new methods and new ideas comes along and pushes the sport forward. And now we're seeing that through CrossFit,
Yeah.
Huge leap in the first few years. We got our first champion in Rich Froning, and then you get your next repeat champion. Now we have another repeat champion on a run. And that's exactly the evolution that happened through strongman.
That's so interesting. I didn't
years,
see that connection. That's really cool.
A first few terrible years, then a true champion, and then multiple true champions that just leap out and crush everyone for years. And people learn from it. And people take those ideas and realize that we can get even better and even better. So when you look at I'm sure people in 92 thought, damn, we've been around for 15 years. We figured it all out. And we look back 30 years and they're like, you guys didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, we'll look at CrossFit 30 years from now and being like, oh yeah, those guys are primitive. They didn't know what they were doing.
That's so cool. Yeah. Just the other day we were at the gym and we were watching, I don't remember what year, but it was Amanda and or they were doing the workout Amanda, and it was Jason Kalipa and Miko Salo and Chris Spieler. And dude, it's just so funny to see like 135 and muscle ups and them failing at it. And it's like, you know, we're only a few years past that, and that's what females are doing, Amanda, at higher weight and higher reps. Like, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really cool progression. So you started to get into CrossFit. You went through your 2-week beginner class with your wife and started to kind of dive into that. CrossFit had pulled from all those areas, which, as you were saying that, you know, I was thinking even in the early days, CrossFit was taking Louis Simmons and you know, Mike Bergner and just some of the greats within their sport and pushing it along. So where did you go from there?
Well, I started, you know, I came to the gym, signed up, started coming to classes. Mostly still trained on my own. And then I signed up for the level 1. The level 1, went to it and said, you know what, I'm going to give this whole thing a fair shake. You know, let's see what it's about. Let's see what is the foundation of which CrossFit is standing on. And I thought the level 1 was great. Yeah. I thought, you know, I went there and I tried to go in and say, I'm gonna keep a totally open mind and pretend like I don't know anything about you know, how to lift weights right now. And for how much negative coverage, you know, CrossFit gets about the level 1 and how you can just go attend a weekend seminar and all this stuff, I went and I thought, dude, that wasn't my experience at all. Yeah, like that's not what happened at all. Number one, there's really nothing that occurred through that seminar that I can disagree with. I mean, from technique to progression, the concept of mechanics, consistency, intensity, the concept of virtuosity, the concept of all these things, there's really very minimal that I can disagree on. And what I do disagree on is going to be like minor details.
Yeah.
So, and when I was there, and this is very early 2014. I think I got it in January of 14. Was when I got the level 1. I left and I said, and pretty much everyone there was like, dude, the level 1's not enough. Like the people there, one of the persons was a games athlete. One was, it was Justin Berg was the flow master. It was the owner of a large gym, and everyone from CrossFit HQ was there saying like, hey, your level 1's not enough. This doesn't make you a coach. You need to get experience. You need to work on your skills. Here's your path forward.
Yeah.
But when you leave here today, you're not really a CrossFit coach. And I started thinking, like, who makes this stuff up? Like, who makes up all this stuff? I'm like, oh, you get a weekend cert and then people open a gym, because I had not really heard of it before.
Yeah.
I never heard of anyone doing that. No one actually provides an example of it, of saying like, hey, this person had no background in fitness, did a two-day certification, now they run a gym. So I was kind of skeptical of that at first, because I was like, well, show me the person.
Yeah.
That doesn't exercise, knows nothing, and is now running a CrossFit gym. And my experience was a total 180 from what all these people had said negatively. And I was like, dude, everything in there is pulled from something else. It's pulled from the best people of that domain. And when you leave, they tell you you're not a coach. You haven't done enough. You haven't done the work. Even if you're a great athlete, it's a different skill set. You need to get experience, work with one person, build up to coaching small groups. So I left the level 1 saying, man, that was a phenomenal seminar.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it to everybody.
Absolutely.
So it was a totally different experience. And that's where I first started coaching. And I started coaching and I thought, damn, now I'm responsible for other people.
Yeah.
Like I gotta learn more. If I'm just responsible for myself and I screw up, it's not that big a deal. But now I need to learn more.
Yeah.
Like I can't just know that like first level info. Like I gotta know the second, third level of it.
Yeah.
I gotta understand this holistically. I need to understand how this impacts this. I need to know this at a much greater level because I'm responsible for other people now and not just me. So that's where I really got just slightly more and more involved within CrossFit.
Yeah.
There's a shift that happens when you're not just responsible for yourself. And part of that shift is the responsibility. But for myself, I can find the solution to a problem as it comes up. So if I have something I want to accomplish, I can just, kind of reverse engineer it. Here's what I want to do. Here's where I'm at, and make a plan to get there.
Yeah.
But when you start working, you got to have as many tools as possible because, you don't have that kind of time and you don't have that ability to make mistakes the way that you can make them with yourself.
Yeah.
For me, if I screw up, no big deal. But with someone else, I'm not allowing myself that freedom to fail when I'm responsible for someone else's results.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone asks me a question, they're like, "Hey, why are we doing this?" Basically, well, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's such a great attitude to have.
I'll get back to you about why we're doing it. I don't really know. We do it because we do it just because. And I don't like that answer. I'm like, well, because it's dogma. It's just how you're supposed to do it. And so every time someone asks me a question like that, I'd get done coaching and be like, all right, I got to know the answer.
Yeah.
Like I got to know why. And then B, I got to know, is this the best way to do it?
Yeah. Well, and that builds a lot of credibility as well. So, there are definitely coaches out there and people out there that are like, they'll just make up an answer or they'll say, I don't know and never get back to you on it. But if you say, I don't know, but I will figure it out and you come back with an answer, that builds credibility.
It does. And, eventually you get to a point where people don't have questions to ask you anymore. Because if as a coach, you have a limited number of questions that people are going to ask you, and it's really not that many, to be honest. If you can break things down really, to their fundamental elements, then there's not that many questions to really answer. So if you can understand the fundamentals of the Olympic weightlifting movements and the fundamentals of the powerlifting movements and gymnastics, there's not that many questions to answer. And so if you put in the work to be able to answer them, after your first year, there's not that many questions you can't answer.
Yeah. After
2 or 3 years, it's an unusual interaction where someone will have a question of like, hey, why are we doing this way? And at first, it's like, I don't have an answer to anybody. It's like, hey, man, I'm just following the programming. That's what it says up there. And I'm doing it because the programmer wrote it up there.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't really know why. If that's what it's written, hey, I can't really tell you.
Yeah.
But slowly you develop that knowledge so that people aren't, when someone asks you a question, you can give them an honest answer.
Yeah.
And if you make stuff up, or just kind of go with the, like, it's just how we've always done it, you can get by on that for a really long time. But if you put in the work, that feeling does go away.
Yeah.
Like, you never have that feeling of like, oh, I look stupid right now.
Yeah.
And they're not buying what I said.
Yeah. Well, and that passion of, I don't know, let me go figure it out. Like that's probably a differentiator between just kind of your average coach and the greats, the ones that are willing to actually go out, figure it out, come back, and then build that knowledge upon knowledge, which really Greg Glassman kind of did, right? He had a base level of knowledge, and then he just continued on by doing what you said, pulling in the greats or the best of the best to create this program that has been created.
Yeah, I think with CrossFit, because people try to define CrossFit all the time, which is it's extremely difficult. And I try to explain it more, the whole constantly varied functional movements at high intensity, all that. People have different goals, and sometimes their goals aren't always, exactly what kind of CrossFit preaches. Some people aren't strictly about performance, or their goals, they just want to look better, or they just want to feel better, or they just want to do this. So when someone asks, why should I apply the CrossFit methodology? To me, as a CrossFit coach, the differentiator between a CrossFit coach and some other coach is that in CrossFit, we don't limit our tool set, or we don't limit the tools on our tool belt because they have a certain name or because certain other people have used them before. I'm concerned with, what is the best tool to use? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? What are we trying to accomplish? What is the best tool to get that done? It might be a barbell. It might be a rower. It might be a jump rope. It might be anything.
Yeah.
So in CrossFit, it's, to answer that question, like, hey, why am I doing this? My answer, every time I try to get to, because this is the best way to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
If your goal is to get stronger, there's no better tool than the barbell. You can do all this other stuff, but that is your ultimate tool. If your goal is to run faster, well, obviously you got to run. But it's whatever the goal is, I want to use the best tool possible. And I think with a lot of different sports have kind of become a clique where you're limiting yourself to just this specific tool, because I'm a weightlifter. So everything we do is a barbell. So you'll see people with like these crazy complexes of like 3 deadlifts, 2 clean, 2 front squat, a push press and a jerk and all this other stuff. When you're like, well, what is the point of all that? Like, you can't even remember. You're trying to figure out like all the reps you're supposed to do. So if someone articulates, we want to get in shape. Well, there's better ways to get in shape than that.
Yeah.
Get on a rower, start pulling. You get a little tired, keep going. That'll get you in shape. If all this work you're doing is just to be in shape, when you don't got to limit yourself to the barbell. You can do other things.
Yeah.
And that's been the thing with powerlifting or strongman. You'll see guys in strongman that it's like, dude, you can put down the odd objects.
Yeah.
Like, you can do something normal for a day.
Yeah.
And you don't always have to train the implements or do something weird. Just go in, do normal stuff. And so that's really where the whole purpose of answering that question, why, every time.
Yeah.
Is because there might be a better way to accomplish this goal. There might be a better tool to use, but I want to know what that tool is.
Yeah.
and how to use it.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, there are people are there for different purposes. So really that question is very individualized. You know, why are we doing this? Well, why are you doing CrossFit? Is it because you want to compete in CrossFit, or you want to be a good jiu-jitsu athlete, or you want to be a stay-at-home mom that can lift all of her own stuff? You know, it kind of depends on the person as well.
Yeah, people have pretty wide goals, and I don't I, I don't form this up front, especially if it doesn't matter what your goal is. A prescription is probably going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
Until you get to a point where you're really good and you're forced to specialize, which, as people at the CrossFit Games have shown, you don't have to specialize until you're at a really advanced level.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
The prescription, regardless of whether you want increased work capacity or improved health, or you just want to look better.
Yeah.
The prescription looks
The same.
95% is the same as this person. I just explain it differently.
Yeah.
I'll give you a better rationale that sounds a lot better of why you're doing it.
Yeah.
But if you compare, what you're doing versus what someone else is doing, man, those look really similar.
Yeah. That's really cool. What did it look like for you to move from strongman into more of the weightlifting type movements? Did I lose you there?
I think the audio cut out a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. Let me.
It's a good old country reception right here.
Well, it might be mine too. Let me do something really quick. I normally do these at the gym where I know there's not a lot of people on the internet, but I'm gonna text my wife and ask if we can make sure the kids are off the internet. So the question was, how did it look for you moving from more of strongman to more weightlifting? Because your weightlifting is phenomenal. I mean, you have really good mechanics and you lift a lot of weight. How did that transition look?
So I started weightlifting because I became a pro strongman, and that was, I liked lifting, but it's very difficult to train without a coach.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I was probably an hour and a half drive from a good weightlifting gym. I'm probably an hour and a half from where Catalyst used to be.
Okay.
So when I was competing in strongman, I was like, man, an hour and a half drive each way, that's 3-hour round trip.
Yeah.
And for something that I wasn't willing to fully commit to yet, I thought, man, that's unreasonable. I'm not gonna do it yet, just because I'm still competing in strongman.
Yeah.
So to do what is kind of just like something for fun, I said, man, 3 hours is just too much. So once I was done with strongman, I started doing a little more weightlifting. And I started doing more weightlifting mainly because you only have a certain number of years you can really do weightlifting. Because as you get a little older, you lose speed, you lose flexibility, and it's not something that you're going to be doing until old age at a high level.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see guys that are really good, but that's because they were great prior to that.
Yeah.
Like when someone's 40 and they're still killing it in weightlifting, yeah, it's because when they were 25, they were an absolute mother.
Yeah.
You're not seeing the way that they can in strongman, the way that they can in powerlifting. So I was 23 at the time, I think. 23 at the time, almost 24. And I said, man, if I'm going to learn how to do weightlifting, that's got to be right now. Like, I don't have any big competitions coming up. I could use a break from some of the heavier movements of like heavy yokes, farmer carries, all the heavy stuff that really beats you up. So I just started practicing, and I took it down to the fundamental level I could, and just practiced the most basic of mechanics. And I spent a lot of time studying youth weightlifters, youth teenage. The guys like CJ Cummings, who's young then. Some of these young athletes that had started and starting to make a name for themselves as teenagers. The reason I would study their technique from that their coaches are having them perform is that this is an athlete that isn't coming from a different background.
Okay. Yeah.
So pre-developed physical ability, like through another. So when someone transitions from a different sport, they're already pretty good at certain things. So their technique is developed, with kind of it's hard to say imbalance because that's usually considered a negative thing.
Yeah.
But an imbalance in terms of weightlifting. Like, this person has unusually strong arms or unusually strong legs or some component to them that is exceptional because of what they used to play.
Yeah.
So I looked at them thinking, how is this high-level coach taking an athlete that doesn't know anything barbell and developing them over time? So I would study, the fundamentals. I would look at, obviously I'm looking at the top lifts that are going on, but looking at the younger guys coming up of like, what are the commonalities amongst these athletes that haven't gotten to a point yet where injury throws off their technique, where coaches are making deviations in their technique due to body proportion or other things like that. To study, what exactly should the lift look like? Because when you see some of these really good competitors and they're a bit new, they're not pushing for records, their coaches had years to help them out and develop, you can see what a lift should really look like.
Yeah.
You'll notice some top level guys where it's like their technique looks a little funky because they broke their elbow 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So you look at the top people thinking that's what it should look like. It's like, no, that's not what it should look like. His looks a little funky because his elbow was broken. He tore his meniscus. Like, they have all these accumulated injuries, or maybe their body type's not perfect lifting.
Yeah.
And so if you only study the guys at the top, you kind of get a little bit distorted view of what you should be working on and what it can look like. So I really looked at the younger athletes of how are they practicing? Like, what does their technique look like? Because even though I'm a bit older, I said I'm still a rookie in terms of weightlifting. So this is exactly how someone else would have me perform it. So if you're early on, you're not going to let people deviate from optimal peak. You're going to be like, no, you have to let's say, of hammering the fundamentals, learning how to, and kind of taking a break from getting beat up from strongman, and then just kind of enjoyed it more and stuck with it. I'll throw strongman stuff in for a while, but once your technique is good enough where you can really do a snatch or clean and jerk workout and sufficiently stress the body to get stronger, it's just more fun to perform.
Yeah.
I mean, at first it sucks because, especially coming from strongman, it's like I'm working with weights on the snatch and the clean that are just there's no stimulus there.
Yeah.
It's simply too light. And then you get a little better and a little better and a little better, where now that workout becomes a little hard. And as the technique improves, now it's a hard workout. Now I can really challenge myself and push. But for a good 6 months, it was like, dude, these weights are so light compared to the stress of like heavy deadlifts or other things.
Yeah.
That I would say it helps with technique, simply because I could look at the weight and be like, I don't care at all what's on the bar. It's all gonna be light.
Yeah.
Like compared to these other things, like a heavy farmer carry, for instance. I'm not trying to push the weight on those weightlifting movements at first, simply because it's like, this is all of my training is technique work. It was probably 6 to 12 months of just technique work, because when you can deadlift, triple that number for reps, it's like, well, how stressful is this snatch really?
Yeah.
It's not. Like I could load 3 times the weight and deadlift it. So early on, my only goal every session was, how do I do this as best as I can?
Yeah.
And then the next session was, how can I do this just a little bit better than last time? And there's a book called Deliberate Practice, or Peak. There's a book called Peak. It's by Anders Ericsson. He's the original author of that 10,000 hour rule.
Okay. Yeah.
It covers the concepts of deliberate practice. And so I treated the snatch and the clean and jerk as if it was deliberate practice, where I would back out. I would ignore kind of the general physical stimulus that those lifts were providing, and treating it the way that I would train a golf swing.
Yeah.
You're not practicing golf in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to develop all this power and I'm going to develop strength and this general ability. Something like golf, you're looking at, I'm purely training the skill of swinging this club.
Yeah.
So early on, I would look at it just from the stance of, treat this the way that I would practice golf, and focus only on doing it as best as I can.
Yeah.
Then eventually, once the technique was there, where I could really express my strength through the movement, then it turned into, how heavy can I go?
Yeah.
How many reps can I do? How crazy can this get? But that took at least a year to get to that point.
Yeah. It's cool that you had that mentality, and it's so important that like new people know and understand that it's not going to come overnight, and those fundamentals. So you were a pro strongman and kind of took yourself back on the weight, and you're like, no, I have to learn the fundamentals here if I'm going to improve. So you said 6 months to a year just working fundamentals.
Yeah, for instance, the snatch, I could already overhead squat.
Okay.
So I could overhead squat already. That wasn't an issue. But all the stuff in between, there were certain things that I would look at. And so I would think of the snatch more like an engineer, where I look at, what is the bottleneck in this lift?
Yeah.
What is the one element that is holding me back the most? And in both the snatch and the clean I couldn't hook grip.
Okay.
I just, if you're not hook gripping, you take some time to wear into the hook grip.
Yeah.
Because you do cleans in strongman.
Yeah.
So my clean was awful, simply because I couldn't hook grip. So like, I couldn't power clean anywhere near where I should have been, just because I'm double overhanding the bar.
Yeah.
So it was, looking at those bottlenecks. So with the clean, it was, I got to learn how to hook grip. And that's going to take me from this point to this point. In the snatch and the clean, I could not I could not move weight off the ground with a neutral spine. I just couldn't do it. And that's not a strength problem because, like I said, I could put twice the weight on the bar and I deadlift this, no issue. But in that deadlift, there's a slight round to the back.
Mm-hmm.
And for strongman, you do a lot of movements with a flexed spine.
Yeah.
Particularly things like stones.
Yeah.
You know, when you pick a stone up, you have a flexed back. So the ability to extend through the spine was exceptionally strong because that's one of the few sports where you're really going to develop that ability to extend through the spine.
Yeah.
So things like stone loads, and in particular, if you're short, you know, they love to throw in like a tall platform for stones because all the short guys can't reach it. So if you're a shorter guy and you're competing, especially if you're competing with heavyweights, they're going to put a tall stone or they're going to put a tall platform or bar for you to hit. So I had trained that ability to move weight off the ground with a flex spine and then be able to extend to be able to reach those tall platforms. So when I came over to learn how to snatch and clean and jerk, I could not get in position with a neutral spine.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing when you finish the extension on either the snatch or clean. I could not finish with the legs. And so when I'm looking at it, I said, it's not a strength issue of the back. It's not a strength issue of the legs. I said, if you look at my squat, that's obviously not a leg strength problem.
Yeah.
My brain cannot perform this movement. It cannot express this strength the way that it needs to. So at first it was every single day practice. How can I snatch and clean with a neutral spine? Over and over and over again. And basically nothing else is even worth practicing. It's one of the concepts of deliberate practice. I didn't know it at the time. I hadn't read the book yet. But to me, it made sense. You know, where is the bottleneck? Where is the single thing that is going to make the biggest improvement? And it was that.
Yeah.
I cannot move the weight off the ground with a neutral spine. And then moving on, once that problem is fixed, move on to the next problem, which for the clean and jerk was my rack position. You know, years of heavy pressing, my upper body was just way too stiff to even remotely come close to doing a full clean.
Yeah.
So it was, okay, now that I can comfortably power clean and put the bar overhead, I got to learn a rack position so I don't break my wrist when I get into a full clean.
Yeah.
And so just moving on from a series of what's the biggest, most pressing issue and putting all of the energy towards that, then the next one, then the next one, until you start getting more and more nitpicky. So when someone comes at our gym and we start learning the lifts, I try to explain to them that when you go all the way up, even to the Olympic level, people don't perform these movements and say, that was perfect, I got nothing to work on.
Yeah.
They're just more nitpicky about it.
Yep.
They're not saying, hey, I got no room for improvement in my technique. Because even if it's a 1% improvement, 1% at those weights is a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So to the untrained eye, you might look at these two lifts and be like, I can't tell the difference. And I'll say, you're right. Even a great coach looks at those two and they can't tell the difference until you break out the slow-mo and go frame by frame. Now you can get even more nitpicky about it.
Yeah.
So right when we first learn them, I say, you're not going to get to that point of perfection where you're like, I'm done, out of here, see you later. You're only going to get, at first, you're going to go from awful to just less awful to okay to, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
To great. As you get beyond great, you start getting more and more nitpicky. So I try to explain that when you know that perfection isn't going to be there, you can enjoy this process a lot more because you know it's not going to stop. But you can appreciate when you make that leap from just being absolutely terrible to just, not that bad. You can appreciate that because later down the road, you're still going to be making those jumps.
Yeah.
You can't be upset that you're not at some place in your technique that you want to be, because it doesn't exist. Like that, there is no endpoint. And it helps people clear their head and not overthink, every detail.
Yeah.
So that they can focus on improvement. Otherwise they get in and they're just like, man, I suck. Like, well, you're gonna suck for a long time, just so we're aware.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna suck for a while. We just want to suck less until we become pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. And even then, once you're pretty good, like you said, then there's the nitpicky stuff. So it's a journey that never ends. It's pretty awesome if you have that mindset.
Yeah, and I say, you look at your technique, and you look at what you think I'm thinking of your technique, which is, it's not the best. But you got to understand that someone else is looking at me the way that I'm looking at you right now. Like, oh man, this guy's got a lot of work on.
Yeah.
Because they've done these lifts at a higher level. And so when they break down a video of me lifting, they're gonna point these things out right away. Like, oh, that can be improved. He could do better at this. He can do better at this. I said, someone's looking at me the way that I'm looking at you right now.
Yeah.
So you can't get worked up about, not your technique not being where you want it, or worry about it not being good enough. You just got to block all that stuff out and focus on what is the next step. What is the next step? What is the next step? And knowing that perfection's not coming, you'll do that work on the fundamentals early on that you otherwise wouldn't do.
Yeah.
You're going to rush that process the whole time of like, oh, I want to get to this point, or I want to lift this certain weight. When if you know ahead of time, hey, you're never getting there. Okay, well, I'm gonna enjoy this journey.
Yeah.
And when you go through that process, and it's not just lifting, it's jiu-jitsu, it's other things as well. You're gonna go into a different endeavor with that same skill set of being able to identify and solve problems and take a step forward that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So even if it's in business, you're going to be able to look at, all right, what is our next step? What do I need to do to improve? You're going to be able to apply these lessons elsewhere. Yeah. Obviously on physical tasks. If someone's an incredible weightlifter or a gymnast or anything that requires high skill, you're going to jump into some other athletic endeavor and the process. You're going to apply the exact same thing you learned. You're going to pick that up really quickly. It's what, you'll see pro athletes do these charity events and people are shocked when basketball players come in and they're bowling like a 250.
Yeah.
And so they're some of the best athletes in the world. You don't think they know how to bowl?
Yeah.
Like give them a couple weekends, they'll at least be okay.
Yeah.
So I explain it like, hey, you can go do any physical task.
Yeah.
So this isn't like just a wild goose chase of like, oh, I'm never gonna be better at it. No, if you pick one thing and you really execute and get really good at it, you can learn all things.
Yeah.
Any physical thing. And then when it's outside of that physical task, you'll be good at the workout stuff too. Whether it's business, it's your relationship, it's your kids. You're going to approach it the same way.
Yeah.
And take what you learn and improve.
No, I completely agree with all of that. Have you heard of Harv Eker? T. Harv Eker? He wrote a book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Something that he always says is how you do anything is how you do everything. And when you're explaining all of that right there, I completely agree. I've done CrossFit for about 8 years, and I've never been like a great CrossFitter. I'll go do local competitions and stuff, and it's fun. I have a good time. I would like to be like a better CrossFitter, but I started jiu-jitsu a while ago, and in learning that process, it's very much like CrossFit. You go there, you don't know anything, you start to learn things little by little, and I started picking up on it pretty quick. And I was like, that's because of CrossFit. It's because of the time that it took me to learn the progressions there and learn to be patient and learn the lifts. And, then you get into another sport and it's like, oh, that's why. And how you do everything, or how you do anything is how you do everything. Like I completely agree. 100% everything you just said right there. So.
And see, once I went through kind of learning the lifts, I'll be honest, I got a little lazy for a period of time. So I had finished school, started working outside of the gym, got a little fat, got a little lazier. I got a little comfortable. And then COVID hit. So COVID hit, and it kind of forced a reassessment of values.
Yeah.
And things that I hadn't fully bought into, that I realized were making me worse, I just totally rejected and was like, I always thought that was nonsense. I'm not doing that anymore. So there's stuff like, the idea of balance. And I started realizing, like, man, I don't really like to just sit around relaxing.
Yeah.
That's not me. It might outwardly look like relaxing, but like when I'm done at the gym, I would rather pick up a book and train my mind. Like I'm physically tired, but mentally I'm still ready to go. So I just wasn't like a sit around watching Netflix kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I was slightly trying to be.
Yeah.
The bit of time before COVID hit, I was kind of trying to be like, what, not don't seriously, but like, you don't have to strive to be the best at stuff. You can just be a well-balanced guy. Like, go up to work, do a good job at work, be a good husband, be a good dad, have some time for hobbies, all that. And I didn't really believe in it at first. And COVID hit, and all I'll say about it is that the people promoting that stuff, I didn't like how they acted during COVID. And I thought, you know what, this is nonsense. So since we're in California, I mean, owning a gym in California for those first 6 months was brutal.
I bet.
Being shut down, then opening, then being out in the parking lot when it's 105 degrees outside. Then on top of that, so we followed every single rule and guideline and regulation there was. At no point had we ever broken the rules. And still, people called the city and they called the county. They called every state department on us. And I said, hey, man, we are following every single regulation. And people just continued to harass us.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, what do you want? Don't be mad at us. Dude, go talk to your politician and have them say, hey, these guys can't be open at all.
Yeah.
But as far as following the rules, I said, man, I followed every single one of them. And people still are all over us. So once COVID hit, I had like 6 months of being like, you know what? Enough of all this stuff. I'm not really living the way that I personally agree with. So my workouts just hit a totally different level.
Yeah.
They just like those first 6 months, And it's something that I explain, CrossFit preaches that intensity is the driver of results.
Yeah.
So for a good 6 months, the intensity was just off the charts. Just back to it was back to being like a teenager again. Like the excitement of going to the gym and training was like back to like teenager level when you're like, you can train as hard as you want, and you're never sore and you're excited.
Yeah.
It was like back to that level of intensity for a solid 6 months. And that kind of correlates with the same time I started posting more on social media because we had to.
Yeah.
So I quickly got back to like, slowly declining a little bit. And then 6 months of like the best workouts of my life. I'm right back to all-time shape right away when those 6 months were up. And so for 6 months, it was like every time I'd be a little tired, I would just think of like, I would remember like, oh, hey, someone called the city and made a fake complaint about it.
Yeah.
I
love that. Let's see.
I started doing some benchmark workouts or some classic CrossFit stuff where I said, hey, I got an hour to train. Let's see where we can take this. And then at that point, that's kind of where the social media popularity came up. And
sorry, man. I don't know if it's my connection or what, but every once in a while you're cutting out. I'm sorry about that.
now,
You there?
yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so sorry, you were talking benchmarks, and that's kind of when your popularity on social media started to really take off.
That I started posting them. It really picked up. I did a 330 Isabel, and we're an hour and a half from maybe a little less than an hour and a half from Aromas, and Dave Castro likes to go duck hunting.
Yeah.
So where we're located is a really popular duck hunting spot. So he had never come to our gym because it's always around the holidays, and so we'll have like an off schedule. So he had not made it in yet. So he came in, he posted us, he posted something up about our gym, and then issued a new Dave Castro challenge.
Yeah.
Which was if someone could do that 330 Isabel under 20 minutes. And he didn't know at the time, but that 330 Isabel I did was, and this is a weird thing, and this kind of goes into training philosophy a bit, is it's really hard to the stronger you get, the harder it is to program and expect performances on certain days.
Yeah.
So everything could go wrong, and you're Superman, and you can do everything right, and just that day it's not there. So if I remember correctly, we had some friends over for like the day after Christmas. So we had spent all Saturday drinking, and I mean all from like 5 p.m. on, just drink nonstop. Sunday, I wasn't even hungover. I woke up on Sunday. If I wake up, it's like that. So I do nothing on Sunday. So I go to the gym on Monday, I start working out, warm up. And at first, I just thought, I had no expectations of the day. And was like, well, we'll find out what I can do. And it felt, way better than I thought it was going to feel. So I had gotten up in weight, and then I thought, well, I'm just going to do as many reps as I can at 330. And so I did the first one, did another one, and another one, and then they were so good that I thought, I'm holding this minute pace, see how long I can hold it.
Yeah.
Then somewhere around, like rep 7 or 8 happens, and I thought, holy shit, let's see if I can push this to 30.
Yeah.
30 is always my cutoff. Like that's always to me. If I had to workout, will probably be between 10, 15 reps. But if they feel incredible, I always go up to 30 just because that's Isabel.
Yeah.
So I kept hitting makes and hit the 30 rep mark. So I had posted the video. So when he issued the challenge, I'm like, well, that time was after a weekend of drinking the whole time. So he put up a thing if anyone can do it in 20 minutes, and I said, well, shit. If everything goes well, I bet I could do 20 minutes. So that's what initially boosted my following, because people knew me locally just from strongman and other stuff like that. And I started posting more regularly. I was like, all right, let me put up another video. And then every video I put, the algorithm works where it's like, okay, you have these new followers. It's going to show your video to them. Let's see if their friends like it. Oh shit, I should probably post more.
Yeah.
Post a little more. I'll post a little more. Then I won an open workout, and it's just kind of slowly the same thing. Like people would see the video more. I have more followers. Then I'd be like, well, I should probably post more. Until it started becoming like a regular thing. But before it was like every 2 weeks, maybe every month.
Yeah.
So it was mostly like just that kind of popularity grew a little bit, posting that stuff up.
It's pretty cool. I wanted to ask you about your fridge, because that is the most beautiful thing every Sunday. I think it's Sundays that you post it. Is that your fridge, or is that your family's fridge?
That's a family fridge.
All right.
So I started posting them, and we only really started meal prepping when we had kids. And it's kind of the same thing that I talked about. Like, when we do nutrition coaching with people, the very first thing we try to identify is, what is the single biggest problem that you have? Like, what is the root cause of, like, every time you either eat something you don't want to eat, or don't eat something you want to eat? Like, what is holding you back? So when we had kids, now it became, we can't cook at home as often. And then trying to cook for only like 2 or 3 days at a time just wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
Something always pops up. So once we had our second kid, we started doing, hey, we got to cook the whole week. Like we have to start. So we normally do it Sunday night now. I said, we gotta have 5 days plus Saturday breakfast ready to go. Because we won't have time during the week. So we started cooking for a full week, and we had this 7-step process that we were using with people at the gym that was really successful at the gym, but I hadn't seen anyone kind of cover that idea yet. You see it a lot with see it a lot with habits-based coaching, where people will talk about it, but then when it's like there's a hierarchy to those habits. Like some matter more than others. So we started posting. We went through that 7-step process ourselves. Realized that, hey, we're failing because we plan to be able to cook. We can't cook. Then we're eating stuff for a full day of like whatever convenient stuff we can put together. So we started cooking for a full week, and then organizing the fridge to where it looks the way that it looks when I post it up.
Yeah.
And then just said, hey, like, part of posting that up is that, you know, when you start off at the gym when you're younger, I gotta hear it from people all the time. It's like, oh, you don't understand, you don't have kids. So I've heard that so of, oh, you don't get it. Oh, you guys. That now that we have kids, I'll be like, no. You need to do this more.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do it more. We didn't meal prep before because I can just go home and cook.
Yeah.
And so we started posting that up, and sharing all of those steps along with it. Of like, you know, the fridge is one aspect of it, which is really critical for someone that has kids. But if they don't, then it's not as important. So we put that one up just mainly because I've had to hear it so many times from people about, oh, you know, we have kids and we can't do this. And we started saying like, hey, this is how we do it. And it's not really about the nutrition part of it. It's the speed, it's the convenience. And when I get home, or just any time during the day, I'm better at everything I do if you can have the hunger problem solved.
Yeah.
Like those Snickers commercials about, you know, you're not you when you're hungry. They're popular because they're true. Like I can tolerate so much more from my kids if I'm full than if I show up at home and I'm hungry and now they're fighting, they're going off about something. I said, none of this stuff that you see here is really about the nutrition of it. It's all about those other factors where now I'm not hungry, so I can be a way better dad.
That's
because
cool.
I'm not going to get irritated about the little tiny stuff that otherwise I'd be irritated.
Yeah.
Like if I show up at home, I'm hungry, I'm trying to cook dinner, and these two are fighting.
Yeah.
That whole interaction is not going to go well.
Yeah.
But
Now,
if it's taken care of ahead of time, you know, I can deal with this.
yeah. So the fridge isn't completely about nutrition, but what do you do for nutrition? Do you try to follow certain macronutrients, or are you kind of meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds type of guy, or what do you do?
We do not really track that much anymore. I used to be diligent about it when I had to keep my weight for weigh-ins. So now that I'm not in a weight class, I spent enough time tracking to know what the meals should look like.
Yeah.
So I don't need. It's not that I'm not tracking. It's that I kind of have a base diet. And then anything on top of that, I recognize right away as being unnecessary. So in the course of 7 days, you know, I'll probably typically eat 5 meals a day. One of those we might eat out, or we might cook a big dinner at home. So I need 34 meals.
Yeah.
And the first meal of the day is almost always beef. And I can cook that easily at home. We buy the pre-cooked hard eggs at Costco. So if one meal is eggs, the last meal of the day is always yogurt and fruit, or cottage cheese and fruit.
Yeah.
And instead of fruit, sometimes I throw some jelly or stuff that tastes better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just depends. There's 14 meals out of the way. So now I'm down to only 20 meals that I got to cook. And that's usually what you see in the fridge. You normally see about 15 to 20 meals in there lined up ahead of time. So those are what I eat most of the time. We'll cook at home a few times, sometimes during the weekdays, definitely on the weekends, Saturday, Sunday night. And then everything on top of that, I recognize as, hey, I don't need to do this, and it's not really beneficial or critical, but I'm going to eat it because I like it. So if I have, like, sometimes my kids will come home with their food from school. So it'll be like, I'll eat the kids' food, or we'll have some other kind of dessert, or any other kind of snack or something else. It makes it clear that if I got to bring my weight down, like it's been creeping up for a bit, I'm like, you know what? I got to cut this stuff out. All I do is just strict about, hey, it's all cooked, it's all there, and it's just a hard no. Like, yeah. No, I don't want that. No, I don't want that. I don't want, the donuts you brought. I don't want that. I just say no to it. And if I feel like I have a little bit of room where, hey, things have been well, I'm training hard, I can let some of that stuff slide and just not worry about it. So there's the article's old now, but it was the founder of Precision Nutrition. He put out an article a long time ago about the concept of displacement. And it was, the food that you eat, it's not just, if you eat junk food, it's not just the impact of that that you eat. It's the fact that you're not eating nutritious food as well.
Yeah.
And that's the concept that I think, when people start ripping on CrossFit about the whole no sugar thing, and they start getting into these ridiculous arguments about, like, well, all carbohydrates break down, all yada yada. Sure, you can make all those arguments you want, but in terms of processed refined sugar, you don't need any of it.
Yeah.
Now, how much is harmful? It depends on the dose. A little bit, not a problem. Most people aren't having a little bit.
Yeah.
Most people, it's way too much. Second, they're not understanding this idea of displacement. People aren't eating, meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, all this stuff. And then on top of that, adding sugar.
Yeah.
They're having sugar first and then not eating any of that nutritious stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, they had too much dessert. No. All they had was dessert.
Yeah.
You're missing that point. Like, when they ate breakfast, they didn't have any eggs. They didn't have any fruit. They didn't have any vegetables. They didn't have anything of real nutritional quality. It was just pancakes.
Yeah. When I really started just focusing on protein.
So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, audio's a little bit off, so I stepped on you there.
Oh, that's fine.
When I really started
that concept of
sorry.
displacement.
Keep going.
You go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just agreeing with you. And when I really started to focus on protein, like, hey, I'm going to try to hit 1 gram of protein per pound that I weigh, maybe 1.25. I didn't consciously stop eating sweets. I just stopped eating so many sweets because it was displaced with other real foods. And so crazy body composition changes. And it's like, I didn't stop eating sweets. I just focused on protein, and all of a sudden, subconsciously, I'm eating way less sugar.
Yeah, so I think that concept of displacement is probably the number one thing that I try to apply for nutrition. Is it's gram of protein per pound of body weight. I don't really add that much fat because your protein sources will have fat in them.
Yeah.
So I'll add some, but it's really it doesn't need to be very much. I make sure that I have enough carbohydrate for some of the higher intensity workouts. So I eat rice. It's mostly rice and potatoes,
Yeah.
and fruit. Vegetables, I just don't like these vegetables. Nothing against them.
Yeah.
Then anything on top of that it's very easy to identify. Like, hey, this is totally unnecessary, and it's not beneficial. These brownies are not better than me eating, a fruit salad.
Yeah.
It's not beneficial at all. Now, is it harmful? This amount, probably not. Not going to be that big of a deal. But a lot of people can't even get to that first point.
Yeah.
Where if you ask the question, okay, it's not harmful, but is it beneficial? Are you telling me that there's a benefit to eating this? And a lot of times, because people have, like, they've already decided, like, they're going to rip on CrossFit's motto about nutrition. Like, they won't even get into this kind of basic thing. So when it comes to changing your food, it's like you have an asymmetric risk. Like, there's only upside to changing your food. If you switch all that junk out, is it going to harm you? Definitely not. No way. Is it going to benefit you? Maybe. But if it doesn't benefit you, you're in the same spot.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't benefit you, you're in the same spot. And if it does, you're better off. So you literally have nothing to lose. You only have to gain from here. So all that meal prep is just to get the foundation of my food. This is what I'm going to repair my body with. This is what's going to fuel the exercise. On top of that, it's easy to say, hey, I'm eating this because it's delicious and it's fun. And if it becomes a problem, that makes all the habits the same. It's very easy to cut out. Whereas when that stuff is, when you're not really willing to be honest about it, and it's kind of, intermixed into your regular life and regular day, it's hard to get rid of.
Yeah, I agree. It's cool that you're so disciplined with it. Have you heard of Stan Efferding? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was chatting with him and he just said, he's like, from a very young age, like, nutrition is just part of it. And he inherently understands that there are certain things that you just need to get in a day, whether it's macros and micros. And I just admire that in you, that you've got that, and in him, and just anyone. Like, bodybuilders are pretty good at, like, macros, but then you get deeper into, those micros and knowing what you need to hit. It's cool. So that's admirable. Good job. I enjoy seeing your fridge pictures.
Yeah, and Stan Efferding is a good example because, at any of these aspects of, like, how you should apply it to your own training, Stan Efferding has, like, an extreme survivorship bias, in his own results. So I would say, if you look at guys in their 50s that are as jacked as Stan Efferding,
Yeah.
the guys that are jacked in their 50s, all their lifestyle looks extremely similar. Like, they all do the exact same things. So if you want to get to that point, you're not going to see people eating garbage. You're not going to see guys pounding booze. You're not going to see them not sleeping.
Yeah.
They won't make it to be at that level of performance in your 50s. So people will always bring up, like, they'll bring up someone who, they do all the wrong things and they're 25. It's like, okay, but how good would they be if they didn't have those things?
Yeah.
They would probably be better. So I've always tried to apply the things that these old guys are doing. The earlier you can do what those old guys are doing, the better your results are going to be. So with nutrition, it's obvious. Hey, these guys that are old and jacked, none of them eat junk.
Yeah.
You're not going to see it. Maybe some in their 40s, a small amount in their 30s. Yeah, somewhat common in your 20s, but not when you get to that age.
Yeah.
So you don't see, the impact it has because it hasn't had time to accumulate or compound yet.
Yeah.
And that's like the same. You could look at it the same way with training. When a lot of these older guys, you're seeing a lot of strength athletes move to CrossFit as they get older. And Dmitry Klokov is a good example. That's like, dude, these weights are beating me up.
Yeah.
I need another form of exercise. I've always been of the opinion that why would I use a heavy weight if a lighter weight will produce the same stimulus? And it's the same reason when you look at someone like Stan Efferding that's also that strong at that age. Okay, well, how are these guys training and how are they taking care of their bodies?
Yeah.
Could I apply that earlier on so that my results now are better and that I can last that long?
I like that. I like how you look at the older people and you learn from them. Like you said, with the weightlifting, you looked at the younger people. You seem very analytical in your thought. Like you think things through really well. So that's I like that a lot. I appreciate your time coming on. It's been about an hour and a half, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but man, just like from my selfish standpoint, like you just keep it up because I love watching your content. Love hearing people talk about it. And it's fun to see that progression over time. And just how old are you? Do you like 30, 35?
31.
Oh, 31. I'm sorry. I added 4 years onto you there.
No, that's fine.
Oh, dude, so you're young. You got plenty of time to keep getting stronger and yeah.
I got some years left.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. So you want an open workout. So you do the open every year.
Mm-hmm.
You have any CrossFit goals?
Not really.
Okay. Well, you just need to get to 35 and then you're like a shoe-in for the Masters.
I gotta I need to get a sub-3 Fran.
Okay.
That used to be the sub-3 Fran used to be a big deal. It's not a big deal anymore, but a sub-3 at a high body weight is still a big deal.
How much do you weigh?
255.
Yeah. I mean, it's
So
muscle, so it's a good weight.
I gotta bring the weight down a bit to get that under 3 minutes, but those fast Fran times are usually like $180. So
yeah, they're little people.
I gotta get the Fran time, and then I've kind of taken the last few months. The last 4 weeks I injured my hand, so my Olympic weightlifting hasn't been very good, and the last few months have kind of been just a bit on cruise control.
Yeah.
So this will probably be my first year of really being like a resolutioner.
That's cool. Like
I'm going to
setting some goals in 2023.
Yeah, I got 2 weeks to figure it out. I'm going to Vegas this weekend, and then I'm gonna start January 1st. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna be a resolutioner for the first time.
That's awesome.
I used to write that stuff off and be like, "Hey, man, just start right now."
Yeah.
But there's kind of been a point in time where it's like, you can't really be at your best all the time. And so when you slide a little bit, let things heal, kind of reset your mind a bit. This will be my first year that I'm like, all right, I'm going to write these down and actually I'm kind of in the extreme of like staying in the moment.
Yeah.
So this is my first one of like, all right, I'm going to chop some of these things down. Like certain lifetime PRs that I can say I hit for 2023.
Yeah. Dude, there's something powerful about writing it down. I've talked about that for a long time. There's actually this little tiny, I usually have it here, this little book. It's called Oh man, it just left me. It's a tiny book. I'll send you what it is. But writing your goals down and reading them every day. Like, it sounds so simple and it's hokey and it's like you're putting it out in the universe and it's all this crazy hokey stuff, but it works. It's
My wife's a writer. She writes she writes them all out.
yeah.
And with goals, so my thoughts on goals have always been, if you have a big goal, in the future, if you take a year goal, you break it down to 3-month check marks, and then you have kind of like monthly, weekly, and you can even get down to daily. And then your habits are, your smallest unit
Yeah.
that you're building on. So I've always said, I think these goals hold you back, because when you break these goals down to like what's it going to take on a daily basis, you realize like, oh man, that's nothing. That's nothing at all. I could easily do that. And so, well, you got to aim bigger. So I said, if you take the stance of like, all right, each day I'm going to maximize the day. I'm worried. You wake up. What can I do before the day is over? I said, as long as you're on a good trajectory, that goal you reach is going to be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
If every single time, every time you feel like, I'm going to kind of slack off and take the day off, kind of setting a goal, becomes the limit for a lot of people. Of like, I'm happy with that, but you're not seeing what you could have been.
Yeah.
Whereas if you take it on like a one day basis of like, I want to make sure I'm still going north, or I want to make sure I'm still going east. I'm heading towards the right direction. But how far can I get today?
Yeah.
It drives my wife nuts, because she's very writes it down, very clear, and I take the stance of like, hey, what can we do right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, can you imagine if we all focused on getting as much done in a day as possible and being as efficient as possible? I mean, you'll surprise yourself in a year, 2 years, 3 years. You'll get farther than you think. I mean, not you have that mindset. I'm talking like, the general population. Usually it's just get through the day. But what if we focused on
to make it to this point? Like,
yeah.
I just got to make it till I get home.
Yeah.
When it's like, what if you thought of getting home as like, all right, it's the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I got a whole quarter of the day left.
Exactly. What can be built? How can we change the world? How can we help people? How can we add value? All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking your time. Appreciate everything you're doing. Where can people find you?
Instagram at WallStreet Weightlifter. Same name on TikTok. On Twitter, it's 50-to-1 method.
50-to-1 method. Okay.
Twitter, they cut a character out of your name. You can't. I'm over the lake, so
you had to change it on there. You plan on doing
I had to change it.
Any YouTube stuff in the future?
I have one set up. I haven't fully gotten it out yet.
Okay. Well, when you do, I imagine it will be good.
For 2023, so I have a template available on Train Heroic. It kind of takes people through what the 50-to-1 method is and the basic ideas.
Cool.
So the YouTube channel at first will be kind of a longer form explanation of what's included for your coach's instructions. So once you read through them, get the high level information. If you need more info on it, then you can go to YouTube and see a longer explanation of it.
So is that method on Train Heroic right now? Like, is that program up? So people can go find you there too and get that method. Cool.
Yeah, it's a general strength training program. It's not, as long as you have access to just a regular CrossFit gym, it's there. There's nothing that is too complicated for people to do.
Yeah.
So as long as you can back squat, deadlift, and overhead press, you can follow it. All the accessory stuff, the Olympic weightlifting, it's not critical to the program. It gives you a way to kind of introduce yourself to them. And people just started using it about 6 weeks ago or so.
Yeah.
So before they finish the 8 weeks, I'll start getting some videos up of how to adapt that time they run it. So when someone buys the program, they have access to the app for a year. So you can follow it for 8 weeks. You can go right into the next one or take a week off. So you can run it 6 times in a year. But each time you do it, it becomes an iterative process where I'm going to go watch this video. Now I understand this idea a little bit more. As I do it next time, it's going to be a little bit better. I see the accessory work he put in here, but I understand why it's there. And so maybe I'm going to swap that exercise out a little bit.
Yeah.
Or emphasize this or that. So that's going to be all the first YouTube content.
That's awesome.
I just got to get around to it one of these weekends. It's not going to be this weekend.
Yeah, Vegas. That'll be fun. I have a friend who her name's Christine, and she has a YouTube channel called Frugal Fit Mom, and does very well on YouTube. So with your knowledge, your experience, your Instagram following, just ideas. That's something that a direction that you could possibly go that I personally think you'd do really well on. So yeah.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, no, I appreciate you. Thanks for everything. If you ever need anything, reach out. I'm in Idaho, so I don't know what I can do, but I'm happy to help out however I can. I'll get this up. I'll let you know when it's up, and we'll just push it out to as many people as possible. And like I said, I just appreciate your time and your content.
All right, thank you.
So, all right. Hey, thanks. We'll chat soon.